interject. Just something that I think is left out a lot with the Oulipo. People focus a lot on kind of the mathematics of it and all these constraints, but I think it's a very personal thing. And it's not like if you're an Oulipo author, you just love all constraints unambiguously, and if you're not, you don't. One thing I was surprised to find out, Harry Matthews, who's one of the great Oulipo authors and just loves very much certain kind of constraints. I was reading an interview with him in the Paris Review, and he was basically this person who was just really into writing, and he was kind of an Oulipo author before the Oulipo found out about him. He just kind of liked doing this stuff. But one day he found out that Georges Perec had written this book without an E, and he was talking to the Paris Review about it, and he just told them, that horrified me. And you know, it's kind of a funny thing, because you think, oh, but you're an Oulipo author, like, don't you love that? But you know, it is really just kind of a very, so I think kind of something that gets left out is just that the constraint can be a very personal thing, and kind of the whole, there's no E in a void, overshadows the fact that that's actually a book where that's kind of a theme about the book, and the fact that there's no E it's not just a mechanical thing. Like there's this whole kind of quest to figure out, like kind of this existential quest to figure out something that's missing from all these characters' lives, and you kind of know that it's the letter E because you have E in your alphabet, but if you could think if there was a 27th letter that none of us know about, and you just feel this sense of loss, or there's also kind of the fact in that book that all these people who have this letter E kind of tattooed on their wrist, but they don't know it's letter E, and they all die very mysteriously. It's almost as though they're cursed or they're being hunted down. And that's a very personal thing, I think, for Perec, because he lost both of his parents to the Holocaust because they were Jews. And I mean, the link is never really made implicitly in the book, but I think, you know, a lot of that comes very personally from this idea of being marked kind of by what you're born with, and that gets born out of this letter E that's on these people.
And there are some authors who choose to hide their constraints, right?
Yeah. Harry Matthews being the kind of primary spokesman for the camp that says it's a better experience for the reader if you know that there's something up and you don't know what it is.
So what did you hide in your book?
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
Page 280.
The
anagram for, you do have an anagram for your name.
Yeah, which is Revel, I can bleed ink.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't come up with
that. Scott, were you going to read something for us also?
Oh, sure. Well, no, there's this, so this author that I was talking about earlier, Christian Bach, he basically wrote this book called Unoya. That's the shortest word in the English language that contains all the vowels. And kind of each chapter of this book only uses words that contain one of the vowels. So like chapter 1 or chapter A only has words that have A in it, and so on for E, I, O, and U.
But not just A, where A is the only vowel in that word.
Yeah, or
like
it's be ah. And interestingly, I didn't realize this until I was reading the kind of the footnotes in the back, but actually another challenge that he put to himself was to use 98% of all the words that could be used in a given chapter in the chapter. So it's really kind of amazing. And the reason that I thought it should be read out loud is because I heard a recording of him reading this book on the internet, and he does an incredible job of it. And I'm not going to do an incredible job of it, but it's a very rhythmic book, and you definitely hear kind of, you know, the sound of the language, and you begin to realize what each vowel actually means in a very different sense than you think of it as usual. So I'll try to read.
You're not going to read from chapter U, right?
I wouldn't.
Yeah, because there are kids here.
That's the body vowel.
It's really dirty.
Yeah. No, I'll do A, which is the stately vowel. It's about this Arabic fellow who's out in the desert, and his name is Hassan. Hassan wants a catnap and grabs as a cow meant hash, grass and smack, khat, ganja, and tobacco. An amalgamum that can spark a pharmacal flashback. Hassan falls slack, arms asprawl, and has a nap that spawns dark phantasmata. Satan stands back, a damask aris, and finds a fractal mandala, a charm that can trap what a Kathar savant calls an astral avatar, part man, part bat, all fang and claw, a phantasm that can snarl and gnash at a carcass. So that's all I'm going to do. You can have a look at the book later on. But you really get a sense of just how that A really works there. And the more you read it, the more you just kind of feel these letters kind of emoting into you. So it's a wonderful book, and it really makes a lot more sense than you would think from that snippet.
So Daniel, you live in the States. What's it like to be a member from abroad? Are you one of two who live outside of France? Is that right? In terms of attending meetings, that sort of thing.
It's frustrating not living in Paris because there are monthly meetings in Paris, and I can only just read the minutes and collaborate after the fact. But there are all kinds of reasons that I don't live in Paris right now. But I was going to answer that question. Not being able to attend the well, let me flip it around. One thing that's really nice about being in Paris and at the heart of the activity of the Oulipo is that these meetings that they have monthly there is a protocol, and there are minutes that have to be taken in a certain order. But it's also just this kind of work session that really births a lot of interesting collaborative projects. Or if not collaborative projects, then a member will come to a meeting and say, I've written this poem that has such and such a constraint, and then another member will hear that and read the poem and think, I'm going to add a different constraint, or I'm going to riff on that in a certain way. And so it's really like the collaboration, since we're talking about literary communities, is not always immediate. There's a lot of allusion and reference to other work that has come before or is happening concurrently, and that's really an exciting part of being there. On the other hand, living in the States, it's easier to think of myself as a missionary for Oulipian dogma.
And the collective, of course, it began in France. It seems perfect for French to do this sort of thing. I was thinking, my mother was French, so I thought back to tongue twisters that she would say that just wouldn't work in English. Okay, I'll share one of them with you that you have to memorize before you leave. Tonton, ton tétatiro tétatu, which means, uncle, did your tea get rid of your cough? Ton tétatiro tétatu, but you just that lyricism in a Romance language. So I wonder about it existing in other languages or being popular. And then I was thinking also that Onion headline from years ago about, I think, NATO or Clinton deploying vowels to Bosnia. Pretty good. There are certain languages that you can't do it, basically, or it's been done already.
Yeah, that's one of the most difficult questions that I get asked is, is the Oulipo essentially French? Could it have happened anywhere else? And I like to think that it could have happened anywhere, that any language, a language is rules. It's many other things, but it's built on structures and rules, and the Oulipo is not so much about the particular structures and rules of the French language, so much as the fact that there are structures and rules, and what else is made of rules? Games are made of rules. So why not use language as not just a means of expressing yourself, but a means of playing? That said, I think the French attitude about rules is a little predisposes the French to want to play around with the rules a little more than Americans, let's say. Like the French school system, for one thing, I think stresses being able to make sense of mind-numbing tongue twisters like the one that and they have contests, like the French equivalent of the spelling bee is basically, it's called
dictée,
where you, somebody will say something like what John just said, and you'll just have to write down like what that sentence was.
But that's only because the language is so complicated, nobody knows how to spell in France, adults. They don't know how to write checks.
That is also true.
So you have to learn how to write it. They don't have
Yeah, but
dictated English.
therein lies a ton of potential.
Sure.
Like somebody once sent me a postcard with the first page of The Stranger by Camus written in like French text message speak.
Yeah.
And it was totally delightful, and it worked really well. So, and that's a text message speak is totally a constraint. I don't know that I would have the patience or, rationalization capabilities of writing an entire novel in text speak. I think I would find that really infuriating, but, why not?
So are there missionaries, you among them, to try this out in other languages, Spanish, Italian, for starters, Romance languages?
Yeah, as far as, so there's an Italian offshoot of the Oulipo that's not, it's not formally sanctioned, but nothing is formally sanctioned. The Oulipo is just kind of like, yeah, right on, do whatever you want. Except there's a band from North Carolina named Oulipo, and we're not that cool with that. They're okay. They're like kind of subpar Animal Collective.
You have plans?
I was deputized by the Oulipo to write them a very tactful email saying, hey, would you maybe consider not calling yourself that? And they never responded.
So you've never had a trademark Oulipo?
No, although there was actually a discussion shortly after I became a member of should the Oulipo become a trademark. And it's a pretty interesting argument that I won't get into here. But on one hand, the Oulipo is all about creating these structures and making them available to whoever wants to use them. And on the other hand, it is kind of a brand.
I'm sure.
Insofar as something has to separate, I don't know that it has to, but something should, just given the way things have played out, separate these 38 living or dead or imaginary members of the Oulipo and somebody like Christian Buck or somebody who's going to write a text message novel. That the name Oulipo, at least according to most of the members of the Oulipo, has to mean something.
Any lawyers on staff? Any Oulipian attorneys?
No, some lawyers' spouses, but I think
that could come in
better
handy.
things to do than like the literary intellectual property lawsuit of the century.
Right. There are many offshoots as well, right? You could compose whole poems with some of these. I don't know how to pronounce them. Umupo, a musical one. Upenpo. I like this one. Ulipopo, which is about police literature.
Yeah, like crime thrillers.
The popo, it works well in our.
True, yeah, it works well.
You watch The Wire and they talk about the popo, the police who come to town. Any new ones we don't know about?
Almost certainly.